What would you do if your own mother called you just 2 days before Thanksgiving and told you, don't come home this year? And no, it wasn't because you did something wrong. It was because your presence was considered a risk to be managed, just so your sister wouldn't feel stressed. I'm Emily Hayes. And that is exactly how my world shattered. When that call ended with a cold, hollow dial tone, I thought it was the worst moment of my life. I was wrong. Those 10 words officially killed 31 years of me trying to be the good daughter. No explanation, no apology. Just the sound of a door slamming shut on the last illusion I had about blood being thicker than water. That night, I sat alone on a freezing wooden bench in a New York park, choking back tears and a cheap store-bought pie, watching other families huddle together. I thought I was just being abandoned. I had no idea that that moment of pure isolation was triggering a crazy plan of decision that would lead to a brutal truth at the altar for years later. A place where I did something perfectly legal, but morally indigestible for a family like mine. I replaced them, legally, right in front of everyone. If you've ever wondered how a total stranger can become your legal family when you're well into your 30s, and where the line between choice and betrayal really sits, stick around until the end. Because what happened at that altar will change everything you think you know about family. Before I reveal how I went from the black sheep to the chosen one, take a second to hit like and subscribe if the story hits home, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. Now, let me take you back to the exact moment that fateful call happened. I still remember exactly where I was standing when my phone buzzed. It was a gray, biting November afternoon. I was in my luxury Midtown studio, a place my parents let me stay in as a graduation gift, though they kept the deed in their name. I was standing among half-packed bags, the scent of a pumpkin spice candle filling the air, trying to feel festive. My train ticket to Jersey was bought. Bags were ready. When my mom's name flashed on the screen, I actually smiled. "Hey, Mom." I was just about to. Emily. Her voice was flat, sterile. "I need to notify you of something." A shiver ran down my spine. I instinctively moved my hand to my chest, feeling my heart start to hammer. That tone, flat, icy, was the exact same sound that announced the cancellation of my 18th birthday party. And here it was again. "What's wrong? Is Dad okay? Your father is fine." A beat of silence. "Listen, I've given this some thought, and you shouldn't come home this year." I actually laughed, thinking she was joking. "Wait. What are you talking about?" "Sophia doesn't want the stress. Your sister is closing a massive business deal, and the family needs to maintain a perfect image. We can't have any drama making the partner suspicious." I gripped my phone until my knuckles turned white. "Stress? What drama, Mom? I haven't even talked to Sophia in months." "Exactly," my mother snapped. "And let's keep it that way. You know how you get. How you always stir things up." "I stir things up?" My voice cracked. "Mom, last year I literally just asked, quietly, why I was left out of her promotion dinner. That wasn't drama. That was a question. See? There it is, that attitude. You always have to make everything about yourself." I stood there, paralyzed, watching the snow start to drift outside the window. I was 31 years old, and my mother had just uninvited me from Thanksgiving because I once dared to ask why I was being sidelined. "Mom, I already bought my train ticket. Then eat the cost." Her tone left zero room for negotiation. "Sophia is about to sign with the Waters Group. She doesn't need the pressure. Do you understand?" The call ended with a long, soulless beep. I understood perfectly. I was a liability, a piece of inventory to be shelved for the greater good of the Hayes family brand, a high-end real estate empire where everything, including people, existed only to serve the perfect image. I wish I could say this was the first time, but as I collapsed onto the edge of my bed, staring at that useless ticket, the memories started flooding back like a slow-motion highlight reel of disappointment. My 18th birthday? Cancelled. Sophia needed support for a presentation. "Don't be selfish, Emily. This family stands together," Mom said, while everyone spent the day coddling my sister. My master's graduation. I searched the crowd for my parents and found two empty chairs. They were 2 hours late because they were taking Sophia to see an investor. "Your sister's career is more important than a ceremony," Mom explained later. "More important than me." I remember the nights I spent hunched over my laptop, photoshopping a fake smile onto my own sad face in family portraits before posting them online. I'd write captions like "family is everything" while my tears hit the keyboard. I had learned to shrink myself, to be quiet, to be invisible. I tried to win their love by being the good, compliant girl, but sitting there with that useless ticket, I finally realized, no matter how small I made myself, I would never be small enough for them to actually see me. I called my father. I'm not even sure what I was hoping for. Maybe some small, naive part of me still believed he'd stand up for me, just this once. The phone rang 4 times before he picked up. "Hey, honey." His voice was guarded. He already knew. Dad, did Mom tell you? A long, heavy silence followed. I could hear the TV in the background, probably a football game. She mentioned it. And you're okay with me being kicked out of Thanksgiving? Another silence. Even longer this time. You know how your mother is, Emily. She just wants to keep the peace by having you stay back this year. That's not it. Dad, so what is it? Because from where I'm standing, everyone is choosing Sophia over me. Again, silence. I could hear him breathing. I could almost see him sitting in that leather chair, rubbing his forehead the way he does when he's trying to escape a conversation. Dad, do you even want me there? 5 seconds passed. 10. I think it's best if you just listen to your mother this year. Something inside me went cold. No anger, just emptiness. I get it, Dad. Emily, don't. I said I get it. I hung up. He didn't call back. I sat in my apartment as the sun went down, watching the shadows stretch across the floor, realizing I didn't actually have a home to go to. My father had his chance to choose me, to say just one word in my defense. But he chose silence. He always played the peacemaker. But I finally saw it for what it truly was, a safe way to side with them, without getting his hands dirty. As the darkness swallowed the room, a new resolution began to take shape. I didn't know it then, but that decision would lead me to a woman in the park, the woman who would eventually become my mother in every legal sense of the word. If I wasn't welcome at their table, fine. I'd build my own Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving morning arrived with a leaden sky and a biting wind whipping down the avenues. I woke up in my fancy midtown studio to the sounds of my neighbors. Heavy footsteps overhead, kids laughing, the muffled warmth of happy voices I couldn't quite make out. The scent of roasting turkey drifted through the vents. Someone was making a traditional feast. I made a cup of instant coffee and sat by the floor-to-ceiling window, looking down at the empty streets. The city lights were twinkling, but they couldn't touch the isolation inside this graduation gift that still had my parents' names on the deed. My phone was dead silent all morning. No calls, no texts, not even a happy Thanksgiving from a single person in the Hayes family. Around noon, I made a mistake. I opened Instagram. Sophia had posted a photo. The whole crew was gathered around a lavish table at the Jersey mansion. Mom, Dad, Sophia, her husband, and their toddler. Everyone was glowing under the crystal chandelier. The caption read, "Grateful for family, grateful for the people who matter most." I zoomed in on the photo and counted the place settings. For adults, 1 child, 5 chairs. Not a single empty seat for me. They didn't just leave me out. They used real-life Photoshop to erase my entire existence, like I'd never been part of that perfect family at all. I closed the app and stared at the ceiling. I thought about just ordering takeout and staying in bed all day. That's what a liability deserves, right? A sad meal in a dark apartment, wallowing in self-pity. That's the ending they wrote for me. But then, something snapped. No. I wasn't going to sit here and let them win. I wasn't going to let their rejection turn me into the bitter, pathetic person they expected me to be. I grabbed my coat. If I was eating alone, I was doing it where there was light and life. I wandered aimlessly into Central Park, trying to scrub that photo from my mind. The New York sky was a bruised gray, and the wind bit through the yellow trees. That's when I saw them, a group having a simple picnic on the grass, worn-out blankets, home-cooked turkey, and laughter that actually sounded real. That was the Miller family. I stopped at a distance and just watched. No luxury, no designer outfits like the Hayes, but the warmth radiating from them made my throat tight. In the chill of Central Park, they looked like a small campfire warming up the whole world. The smell of home cooking, the clinking of glasses everywhere I looked. I saw belonging, couples, elderly grandparents, groups of friends laughing like they'd known each other forever. The park was vibrating with the sound of people who had a place to go. I stood there, a ghost in the middle of a celebration. I remembered the call from earlier that morning, when my mother added one last twist of the knife. "Emily, just enjoy the apartment. I put $5,000 in your account. You have everything you need." $5,000 hush money to make me vanish from the perfect family portrait. On the most important day of the year, I sat down on a nearby bench, trying my best to look like I had it all together. Right next to me, the Miller family was deep into their celebration. At the head of the blanket sat an older couple, John and Margaret, with smiles so genuine it hurt to look at them. There was a middle-aged man with his wife and 2 kids, and a charismatic younger guy named Alex, who kept everyone doubled over with laughter. 3 generations, simple and unbreakable. They passed plates around without even asking. They interrupted each other in that messy, beautiful way only people who truly love each other can. I kept my head down, pretending to be busy with my cold sap pie. But my throat was so tight I couldn't swallow. My fingers gripped the freezing wooden slats of the bench. Every burst of their laughter felt like a physical reminder of everything I'd never had. This is what a family is supposed to look like. I thought back to the Hayes dinners, where everyone sat as rigid as chess pieces, measuring every word to make sure we didn't smudge the brand. I forced down a bite of the store-bought pie. I told myself I'd be fine. But I wasn't. All the luxury my parents showered on me, the apartment, the car, the designer clothes, it wasn't love. It was just staging for the perfect life they wanted to sell to the world. I sat there, pushing my plate away, trying not to look at the Millers, trying not to think about that mansion in New Jersey, where they were passing the gravy without a single thought for the daughter they just discarded, and suddenly, it hit me. I finally understood the truth I've been running from for 31 years. This wasn't just about Thanksgiving. It wasn't about Sophia's contract or my mother's peace of mind. It was a system. And I suddenly remembered something Margaret had said months ago. When we were watching some family drama in America, the law actually lets you rewrite your own story, even the one about your family. At the time, I just nodded, thinking she was being philosophical. Now I realized it wasn't philosophy. It was a roadmap. I'd spent over 3 decades trying to earn a seat at their table, shrinking myself, swallowing my pain, apologizing for having feelings, and staying silent when I should have screamed. And what did I get? Left in a park eating a lonely dinner, staring at a family photo that didn't have a single empty chair for me. If I kept going like this, kept being the quiet, compliant, good girl, what would be left of me? Eventually, there'd be nothing left to shrink. The tears came before I could stop them. I turned away, desperate to hide the fact that I was falling apart in public. I grabbed my handkerchief and pressed it against my eyes, trying to be invisible, trying to disappear the way I always had. Honey, a warm, concerned voice made me freeze. Are you all right? I looked up. The older woman from the picnic was standing right by my bench. Silver hair, kind eyes, a face that looked like it had spent a lifetime actually listening to people. She looked at me like I actually mattered. I'm fine. I lied instinctively. Just allergies. She raised an eyebrow. Zero judgment, just pure. I've seen it all wisdom. Allergies don't usually cause a breakdown on Thanksgiving. I let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. That obvious, huh? Only to people who were actually paying attention. She had this gentle voice that still carried a lot of strength, the kind of person who survived enough storms to know how to navigate one. I'm Margaret. I'm Emily. Hi, Emily. She glanced back at her family, then back at me. No one should be alone today. Why don't you come join our picnic? I shook my head immediately. Oh, no. I couldn't. I don't want to be a burden. You're not a burden. She smiled. This is an invitation. There's a difference. I really appreciate it. But my husband tells terrible jokes, she continued as if I hadn't spoken. And my son, Ben, can't stop arguing about real estate. You should come suffer through it with us. The older man, her husband, waved at me from the blanket. She won't take no for an answer. Trust me, it's been 43 years and I haven't won an argument yet. The younger guy, Alex, grinned at me. He's not lying. I looked at my cold, sad food, my empty bench, and my tear-soaked handkerchief. Then I looked into the warm eyes of Margaret, Miller, and her family, people who somehow still had room for a stranger. Okay, I heard myself say. If you're sure. I'm sure. Margaret put a hand on my shoulder. Come on. We just opened another bottle of wine, and there's way too much pumpkin pie left. I stood up on shaky legs and followed her to the blanket, having no idea that this moment, this tiny act of kindness from a stranger, was about to completely change the trajectory of my life. They made space for me like I'd always been there. Someone pulled out an extra cushion. Someone else handed me a vintage ceramic plate. Before I could even sit down, I had a glass of wine in my hand and a warm roll on my plate. I'm John, the older man said, giving my hand a firm, solid shake. This is my wife, Margaret, our oldest, Ben, and his wife, they're the rascals. And this is Alex, he's basically family at this point. Hi everyone, I said, giving a shy, awkward little wave. I'm Emily. Thank you so much for so. Emily, what do you do for a living? Ben asked, sliding a plate of steaming roast turkey toward me. I'm in marketing. Mostly branding. No way. Ben's wife chimed in. I can't even draw a stick figure to save my life, Mom. Stick figures are easy, their 8-year-old interjected. Even I can do that. The whole group erupted into laughter, not at anyone, but with each other. It was a sound that felt like a luxury I couldn't afford. Across the blanket, I caught Alex's eye. He looked about my age, maybe a bit older, with dark hair and a smile that reached his eyes. Fair warning, he whispered. John's about to drop a dad joke. I'm not. John protested. Dotto. He absolutely is, Margaret confirmed, sparking another round of snickers. John grinned, leaning in. All right, all right. Why did the turkey join the band, Dad? Please, no. Ben groaned because he had the drumsticks the kids lost. It. Ben's wife rolled her eyes and Alex just shook his head, laughing. And me? I actually laughed. A real, deep-bellied laugh for the first time in what felt like years. John raised his glass. A toast to unexpected guests who make the table feel complete. Everyone clinked glasses, including me. I looked around at these people, strangers just 15 minutes ago, and felt something I hadn't felt in a decade: warmth, acceptance, belonging. I honestly didn't know families could actually feel like this after the main course, while the kids ran off to play and the guys got sucked into a football debate. Margaret moved over to sit next to me. How are you feeling? She asked softly. Really? I looked down at my plate. A lot better. This is amazing. Thank you, you're very welcome. She took a sip of wine. But that's not what I asked. Her directness caught me off guard. It made me want to be honest. I'm okay, it's been a rough Thanksgiving. Do you want to tell me why you were out here alone? She waited. The truth felt so pathetic to say out loud. My own mother told me not to come home. My sister treats me like a liability. My father chose silence over me. But Margaret just sat there, her eyes completely free of judgment. My mom called me 2 days ago. I finally whispered. Told me not to come. My sister's closing a big deal, and they didn't want the stress. Stress? That's what they call it when you ask questions they don't want to answer. Margaret nodded slowly. I get it, I'm no liar. But at my age, I've seen it all. She smiled sadly. I've seen every kind of rift you can imagine. And I've learned that the people who accuse you of creating stress are usually the ones generating it. They just need someone to pin it on. It felt like a lightning bolt hit me. You aren't the problem, Emily. Margaret placed her hand over mine. You never were. I couldn't even speak. I was literally choking back a sob. Those were the words I had been starving to hear my entire life. Alex, who had been sitting quietly nearby, suddenly spoke up. But are you running away? Or are you actually looking for something? I flinched, looking at him. The question felt like a needle hitting a raw nerve. What do you mean? No offense, Alex said, his voice gentle but razor sharp. Coming from a high-stakes finance background, he didn't do fluff. It's just sometimes we need to stop and face the pain instead of just outrunning it. Avoiding a mess isn't the same as managing the risk. I felt a flash of anger I wanted to shut down. But there was something so sincere in his eyes that I couldn't deny. Yet he was right, and that no BS honesty, that was the foundation of everything we would become. Pause, take a breath with me. If you're watching this and you've ever been labeled the troublemaker just because you asked for basic respect, I see you. Have you ever been the family scapegoat? Drop your story in the comments. I want to read them. And if this is hitting close to home, hit that like button so this message finds the people who need it. Now, let me tell you what happened next. The afternoon faded into that slow, golden haze that only happens after a good meal. Pumpkin pie was served, hot tea was poured. Margaret's grandkids eventually crashed on the grass, wiped out from playing tag. When it was time to pack up, I started to reach for my trash, but John waved me off. Leave it, sweetheart, he said. We've got it. I can't let you do that. You can, and you will. He smiled. Consider it a Miller family tradition. We take care of our own and our new friends. As they were loading up, Margaret pressed something into my hand. It was a small scrap of paper with a Brooklyn address and a phone number. If you ever need someone to talk to, she said, call me. I mean it. Thank you. John appeared at her side, draping his coat over her shoulders. Sunday dinner at our place. Every week. You're always welcome. I shook my head, overwhelmed. You guys are too kind. But I don't want to be a bother. She can and she should, Alex said, joining us. My mom never says anything she doesn't mean. Trust me. Margaret squeezed my hand. Family isn't just about blood, Emily. It's about who shows up. I stood there in the middle of Central Park, clutching a piece of paper from a woman I'd met 3 hours ago, holding an open invitation from a family I had no business belonging to. Around us, the wind started to kick up, colder than before. But for the first time in 31 years, I didn't feel the chill through the trees. I could see other families rushing to their cars, kids being carried on shoulders, grandparents clutching bags of leftovers. Life was moving on. I looked back at the Millers. John was tenderly wrapping a scarf around Margaret's neck. Ben was carrying his half-asleep toddlers, and Alex, he was standing just a few feet away, with this look of genuine expectation. Yeah, I said, my voice barely a whisper. Maybe I'll drop by sometime. Margaret smiled like she already knew my answer. I had no idea right then that I was looking at my future. I didn't show up the following Sunday, or the one after that. It felt strange to sudden like I was trespassing on someone else's sacred ground. But then, Margaret called just to check in. She said she just wanted to know how I was doing. That was by early December. I finally gave in. The first time I went, I stood on the porch of their cozy Brooklyn brownstone for 5 straight minutes. Before I found the courage to knock, the house was exactly how I imagined: old wood, warm, light spilling out of every window. It looked like the kind of place where good things actually happen. Margaret opened the door before I could change my mind. "There you are." She pulled me into a hug so warm it felt like the most natural thing in the world. "We saved a spot for you." That was the first Sunday of many over the next 6 months. I became a fixture at the Miller table. That first dinner, I brought a bottle of expensive Bordeaux, the kind of social currency we always used at the Hayes parties. But when I walked in, the table was set with hot tea and homemade mulled cider. Margaret gave me a gentle smile as she took the bottle. "Oh, thank you, honey. But we don't really need anything that formal here." That awkward moment made me realize just how much baggage I was still carrying from my old world. John tried to teach me how to fix random things around the house, even though I broke something almost every time. Margaret shared her secret bread recipe, the one she swore she'd never actually written down. Ben's kids started calling me Auntie Emily, without anyone even prompting them. And then there was Alex and I became real friends. The kind of friends who text random thoughts at 2 a.m., argue over old movies, and instinctively sit next to each other at dinner without it being a thing. I heard absolutely nothing from my biological family. No calls, no texts, not even a Christmas card. But for the first time in my life, I stopped caring. I didn't know it at the time. But back in that New Jersey mansion, my mother was busy telling her business associates, "Emily is just so busy. Her marketing career in New York keeps her tied up, but we're just so proud of her independence." A smooth, practiced lie, as if that phone call had never happened. But I didn't care, because for the first time, I didn't have to perform to be loved. I didn't have to shrink myself to fit into someone else's expectations. I was just loved. It felt like finally finding the way home. One spring afternoon, about 8 months after that first Thanksgiving, Margaret and I were sitting on the back porch. The garden was starting to wake up. Tulips were poking through the dirt and birds were hovering around the feeder. John and Alex were inside watching a game. We could hear them cheering every time someone scored. "Have you heard from your parents?" Margaret asked quietly. I watched a bird perch on the fence. "No. And I haven't reached out either." She nodded, no judgment. "Do you want to?" I thought about it, really thought about it. Sometimes, I confessed, usually in the middle of the night, I think about calling her just to explain. But then I remember there's nothing to explain. She knows exactly what she did. She just doesn't think it was wrong. That's a hard truth to swallow. It is. I pulled my cardigan tighter. I keep waiting for the guilt to hit. Everyone says you have to forgive family no matter what. That blood is thicker than water, right? You know, I've never believed that, Margaret said, taking a sip of her tea. I've seen so many people find legal recognition for the family they built, rather than the one they were born into. I turned to look at her, my heart skipping a beat. "What do you mean?" I asked. Margaret smiled, that gentle, knowing smile that always seemed to hold a secret. "I mean that sometimes the law catches up to what the heart already knows. Family can be built, Emily. It's not just something you inherit. There are ways to make those bonds official if you really want to." I nodded, thinking she was talking about me taking Alex's last name after the wedding. "Yeah, I guess after the big day, I'll officially be Emily Miller," I said. Margaret's eyes sparkled. "Oh, honey," she said softly, "that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about something deeper. Something even Alex can't give you. Just think about it." She added, "Whenever you're ready." She patted my hand and shifted the conversation to the tomatoes she was growing up back. But her words, they stayed. They took root in my mind and began to bloom when I least expected it. Everything happened so naturally after that. 2 years after that fateful Thanksgiving, Alex and I weren't just friends anymore. We had become something massive, a love that grew so steadily that when we finally admitted it, it didn't feel like a beginning. It felt like an acknowledgement of what had always been there. He took me for a walk in Central Park, right to the exact spot where we first met. "This path looks familiar," I teased. "That was the plan," Alex said. He looked nervous, fidgeting with his collar, his usual confidence replaced by a shaky breath. He stopped, turned me to face him, and took both my hands in his. "Emily, I've spent months trying to find the right words." He took a deep breath. "I want to spend the rest of my life choosing you, every single day." My heart skipped a beat. "I know. Your old family hurt you. I know you're terrified that the people who are supposed to love you will just let you down again." He looked straight into my soul. "But I'm not going anywhere. I'm right here." He pulled out a small velvet box. "Emily Hayes, will you marry me?" I couldn't breathe. I looked at this man, my best friend, my confidant, the person who had stood by me through 2 years of healing, And I saw my entire future. Yes, I whispered. Yes. As he slipped the ring onto my finger, a crowd of strangers started cheering. I was so locked onto Alex I didn't even notice we had an audience. And then I saw them on a nearby bench, John and Margaret, clutching a bouquet of wildflowers, beaming at us like they'd known the ending to the movie all along. The wedding planning started immediately. The venue, the cake, the flowers, it was exhilarating and overwhelming. The kind of dream I'd never dared to have. But one question kept me up at night. The invitations. There was a line for parents of the bride and I had no idea what to put there. Robert and Linda Hayes. They hadn't spoken to me in over 2 years. No birthday calls. No acknowledgement that I even existed. I couldn't put their names on my invitation. They didn't deserve that honor. One evening, I was pacing the Millers' living room until Margaret found me. What's eating you, honey? I told her about the invitation. About the blank space I couldn't bring myself to fill. Margaret sat me down on the sofa. Remember what I said? About legal recognition for the family you choose? I nodded slowly. You said the law recognizes built families. Adult adoption. Margaret said gently. It's a legal process where one adult is formally adopted by another family. It creates a legal parent-child relationship, a new birth certificate, inheritance rights. A whole new identity, everything. My heart started racing. That's a real thing. Completely real. I've seen it change lives. I looked at this woman who had pulled me into her life on the loneliest night of my existence. The woman who fed me Sunday dinners and showed me what a real mother actually looks like. Margaret, my voice broke. Would you and John ever consider actually adopting me? She didn't even let me finish the sentence before she pulled me into a hug. We've considered you our daughters since that first Thanksgiving, she whispered. We were just waiting for you to be ready. Over the next 3 months, we navigated the legal maze of adult adoption together. Margaret took me to meet a family lawyer who laid it all out for me. This process creates a brand new parent-child relationship. In the eyes of the law, your birth certificate will be updated, inheritance rights established, and all legal ties to the Hayes family can be severed if that's what you choose. I signed every paper with a shaking hand, but a heart of stone. On the day of the hearing, John held my left hand and Margaret held my right. When the judge announced, by the power vested in me, I officially recognize Emily Hayes, who will henceforth bear the name Miller, as the legal daughter of John and Margaret Miller. I felt the tears spill over, but with Margaret's warmth guiding me, it didn't feel like some dry, bureaucratic paper shuffling. It felt like a sacred ceremony. It was my rebirth. When the judge signed that final decree, I officially became Emily Miller. New birth certificate, new legal parents, a new family on paper and in my soul. We set the wedding for the following June. We sent out invitations with the line I used to dread, now printed with absolute pride. Parents of the bride, John and Margaret Miller. I should have known the Hayes family would find out. 3 months before the big day, my phone buzzed with a text from Sophia, the first contact from her in nearly 3 years. I heard you're getting married. I stared at the screen for a beat, then blocked the number. A week later, my mother called 5 times in one day. I let them all go to voicemail. Finally, a text came through. Why didn't you tell us we're your family? Call me immediately. I read it twice, then hit delete. 3 years of silence. 3 years of pretending I didn't exist. And now, because they needed to maintain that perfect family image for their new real estate deals, they suddenly remembered they had another daughter. I wasn't even angry. I was way past anger. I was just tired. That night, Alex saw me staring at my phone. You okay? He asked, sitting beside me. My biological family found out about the wedding. He went quiet for a second. What do you want to do? Nothing, I said, putting the phone away. I don't owe them a single thing. No explanation, no invite, nothing. Alex nodded and pulled me close. Whatever you decide. I'm in your corner. But we both knew it wouldn't end there. The Hayes family doesn't handle being ignored very well. The question was, what would they? Do you just say they're crumbling perfect family brand? My mother showed up at my apartment on a random Tuesday. I was working from home, scanning marketing proofs at the kitchen table. When the doorbell rang, I opened it without checking the peephole. Mistake I'll never make again. Emily, my mother, stood there in the hallway. She looked older than I remembered, more gray hair, more fatigue in her eyes. But she still wore that same look of disappointment I'd spent my entire childhood trying to erase. Mother. The word felt foreign in my mouth. What are you doing here? What am I doing here? She pushed her way past me without waiting for an invite. What kind of stunt is this? You're getting married and you didn't say a word to your own mother. We haven't spoken in years, and whose fault is that? I closed the door slowly, counting to 5 in my head. Yours. You're the one who told me not to come home. You told me not to. It was just one holiday. You can't hold on to a grudge like this forever. It's not a grudge. I kept my voice steady. I've just moved on. Her eyes swept across the living room, stopping at the photos on the bookshelf. Me and Alex at the beach, me and Margaret baking. The whole Miller family huddled around a dinner table. I was right in the center of that photo. Glowing. Belonging. Who are these people? My family. Her face went pale. I am your family. You used to be. I looked her dead in the eye. You chose to stop being my family. Remember, you said Sophia didn't want this dress, and in all these years, you never called to see if I was even alive. You erased me from your picture. So, no, mother. You don't get to just show up and act like you own me. I'm not a Photoshop error you can just fix anymore. I want a wedding invitation. No. She froze. What did you say? You heard me. I walked over and held the door wide open. You can't delete someone and then demand a seat at their table. The morning of the wedding was bright and flawless, a June day in Brooklyn. The altar decorated with wild flowers and soft silk ribbons, simple, but warmer than any lavish haze gala in the bridal suite. I stood before the mirror while Margaret adjusted my veil. You look beautiful, she whispered. Simply stunning. I looked at my reflection. The woman in the mirror was calmer, stronger than the girl who sat alone in the park that night. That girl thought she wasn't worth loving. This woman knew better. On the vanity next to me sat the wedding programs. Beside them, two keys lay side by side. One was old and worn, the key to the Midtown studio my parents let me stay in. The other was new, tied with a red ribbon, the key to the Brooklyn house Margaret gave me last week when she said, "You always have a key to come home to us." I picked up the old one. The metal felt cold. I put it back down and gently pushed it away, toward the very edge of the table. I picked it up, reading the words I once thought I'd never be able to write. Parents of the bride, John and Margaret Miller, and just below that, in smaller, elegant script, the family she chose. Margaret noticed me staring. Are you nervous about marrying Alex? Honey, no. I'm just a little anxious about what might happen. I had quietly hired security for the wedding, a silent precaution after my mother's visit. I knew there was a chance they'd pull something. Because if Emily Hayes got married without her biological parents, their brand would crumble in front of their partners. Margaret placed her hand on my shoulder. No matter what happens today, you have a family that chooses you. We will always choose you. Don't ever forget that. I pulled her into a tight hug. I love you, Mom. It was the first time I'd called her that. The word felt as natural as a breath I've been holding for a lifetime. Margaret's eyes welled up. I love you too, my daughter. Through the window, I saw the guests arriving. Alex was already at the altar, looking sharp and incredibly nervous in his gray suit. It was time. Whatever came next, I was ready. The ceremony was everything I dreamed of. Alex was waiting at the end of a flower-lined path. John walked me down the aisle, steady and beaming with pride. The vows we wrote ourselves had half the guests crying and the other half pretending they weren't. But as we were declared husband and wife, I caught a glimpse of the back of the hall. My biological parents were standing there, pale as ghosts, witnesses to a future they no longer belonged to. As Alex slipped the ring onto my finger, everything clicked. It was like the final piece of a puzzle I'd been searching for my whole life. The reception was in full swing when a security guard found me. Mrs. Miller, he whispered discreetly. There are two people at the gate. They're insisting they're your parents. I expected this. Alex appeared by my side instantly. What is it? My bio parents are here. His jaw tightened. I'll handle it. No. I caught his hand. This is my moment. I'll handle it. I want them to see. I want them to see exactly what they lost. Let them see the life I built without their toxic performance. Let them in, I told security. But do not seat them with family. Put them in the very back. Are you sure? Alex asked. I'm sure. The guard nodded and vanished. A few minutes later, I saw them. Robert and Linda Hayes, standing awkwardly at the edge of the party, looking at over 100 guests celebrating the wedding of a daughter. They hadn't looked at a nearest dot just then. The MC prepared to make an announcement. Perfect timing. All right, this is it. Before I reveal the biggest shock of the night, I have a question. If you were in my shoes, would you have even let them in? Drop a yes or nitrogen monoxide in the comments. I really want to hear your take on this. And if you're holding your breath for what happens next, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell right now. Now, watch the moment everything flipped. The MC stepped onto the stage and the music dipped. Ladies and gentlemen, your attention, please. The room went silent. Champagne glasses stopped midair. Before we continue the party, I'd like to introduce some very special people. I watched them from across the room. My mother, Linda, was craning her neck, trying to see the stage. My father stood behind her, hands in his pockets, looking restless. They had no idea what was coming. Please join me in welcoming the parents of the bride. I saw my mother straighten her dress. She was actually fixing her hair, preparing a smile to walk out and claim the recognition she was certain belonged To her Dopmer, John and Mrs. Margaret Miller, the room exploded into applause. John and Margaret stood up from the head table, radiant, waving to the guests. People were cheering, whistling, and cameras were flashing everywhere and in the back. My mother's face went bone white. I watched it happen in slow motion, the confusion, the shock, and then the crushing realization of what that name meant. John and Margaret Miller, the family that chose Emily, and the family Emily chose for life. Linda grabbed my father's arm. What did they just say? My father was stunned into silence. All around them, guests were clapping and smiling, having no idea that the older couple in the back had any relation to the bride. To everyone in this room, the Millers were my parents. My mother's lips moved, but no sound came out. She looked at the older couple receiving the toast, then at me standing with my husband. And the truth finally hit her like a cold wave. She had been replaced completely, officially, and legally. Before I could stop her, she lunged through the crowd. She reached me just as the applause died down, her face flushed red, her eyes manic. My father followed behind her, looking like he wanted to vanish into thin air. Asterisk, what is going on here? My mother hissed, her voice raspy with rage. Who are those people? I kept my voice flat, steady as a rock. They are my legal parents. I finalized the adult adoption 2 years ago. You what? She stumbled back a step. You can't just replace us. I didn't replace anyone. I looked her dead in the eye. You guys abandoned me first. We never abandoned you. You told me not to come home. You chose Sophia. You've been choosing her for 31 years. Guests nearby were starting to notice the confrontation. Conversations died out. Every eye in the room shifted toward us. This is not fair. My mother started to raise her voice. Fair? I felt Alex step up right beside me. A solid, warm presence. You want to talk about fair? I spent 31 years trying to earn a tiny sliver of space in the Hayes family, and you know what I got? A family photo with me edited out. A lonely Thanksgiving and 3 years of deafening silence. I am still your mother. Linda's voice cracked. Not legally. I raised my left hand, my wedding ring catching the light, and not emotionally. Not ever again. Around us, 100 people held their breath. My mother looked around, suddenly realizing she was the center of attention. Her cheeks burned bright red with shame. This is humiliating. She spat. Then please leave. My voice was quiet, but like steel. You crashed a wedding you weren't invited to. You don't get to play the victim here. She looked at me like I was a stranger. Maybe I was. The girl who used to shrink herself to please people was gone. And then, for the first time in my life, my father spoke up. Emily. His voice was thick, broken. I am so sorry. I turned to look at him. Really look at him. Robert Hayes had aged a decade in 4 years. His hair was white, his shoulders were slumped, and his eyes, they were brimming with tears. I had never seen my father cry. Not once in 31 years. I am so sorry, he repeated. I took a deep breath. A late apology couldn't undo 3 decades of pain. But there was one thing I could do: sever the final material ties that bound me to them. I walked over to the reception table, where I had prepared something earlier that morning, a plain envelope and a key tucked inside a small wooden box. I brought them over to my biological parents. The room went pin drop silent. I set them down on a small side table, my movements slow and deliberate. This key, I said, my voice eerily calm, is for the Midtown apartment you let me stay in. But the truth is, that place was always in your names. It was never mine. It was just a tool for control, a way to remind me that everything I had depended on your generosity. I looked my mother in the eye. I don't need a showroom for your fake wealth anymore. I have a real home now, one I built with my husband and my family. Then I pointed to the envelope. And in here is a check for $5,000, the exact amount you sent me that Thanksgiving. With the message, you have everything you need. That wasn't love. That was hush money. That was the price for me to vanish from your perfect family portrait. I've included the interest, paid in full. From now on, we owe each other nothing. My father stared at the key and the envelope, his hands trembling. He leaned down as if to pick them up, but stopped, realizing that taking them meant admitting everything he had done wrong. I shook my head gently but firmly. Everything between us ended that day. Dad, I'm not angry at you anymore. I'm just freed. Around us, 100 pairs of eyes watched in silence. No one spoke, but the support for me was palpable in the air. John stepped forward, placing a hand on my shoulder. His voice was warm but carried a heavy authority. This is my daughter's wedding day. I'm going to have to ask you to leave. A total heavy silence filled the hall before they finally turned and walked away, draped in shame. I should have done better. Something splintered in my chest. It wasn't a healing, but an acknowledgement of an old wound. I know. Emily, I'm a coward. Robert's voice shook. I always have been. I knew how your mother treated you, how Sophia treated you, and I just stood there. I let it all happen. My mother, Linda grabbed his arm. Robert, what are you saying? He brushed her hand off, his eyes never leaving mine. You're my daughter. You were my little girl. And I let them make you feel like you didn't matter. A single tear rolled down his cheek. I am so incredibly sorry. The words I had waited 3 decades to hear finally came. But they were far too late. I know you're sorry. Dad, I said, my voice soft but steady. But an apology can't undo the years you spent just watching. It doesn't give me back my childhood. It doesn't make everything okay, I know. He nodded. Wiping his eyes. I know it can't. Margaret appeared. By my side, she didn't say a word. She just placed her hand on my arm, a silent reminder that I was no longer alone. Linda looked at Margaret with unconcealed hostility. You? She spat, each word dripping with venom. You're the one who stole my daughter. Margaret's expression didn't flicker. I didn't steal anything, Mrs. Hayes. Then what do you call this? John Miller stepped forward, standing beside his wife. John wasn't a man who liked confrontation. In all the years I'd known him, I'd never heard him raise his voice. But when he spoke now, there was a steeliness that silenced the room. I think it's time for you to leave, he said. My mother was stunned. Who are you to kick us out? I am her father. John's voice echoed through the hall. Legally, and in every way that actually matters. He shook his head, calm and resolute. No, ma'am. We didn't steal anything. You threw her away. We just picked up what you discarded. Linda winced as if she'd been slapped. 4 years ago, John continued. This young woman sat alone in a park on Thanksgiving because her own family told her she wasn't welcome. My wife invited her to our table. We fed her. We talked to her. We treated her like a human being. He stepped closer to Linda, lowering his voice. Do you know what she told us that night? She said she couldn't remember the last time she felt like she mattered to anyone. 31 years old. And she didn't know the feeling of being wanted by her family. Linda opened her mouth, but no sound came out. We didn't steal your daughter. We just showed her what a real family looks like. The rest was her choice. He turned to the guests. Now, this is my daughter's wedding day, the happiest day of her life, and I will not let anyone ruin it. He nodded to the security team. Please escort these people out. As the guards approached, John wrapped an arm around my shoulder. Emily is a Miller now, he said quietly. And Millers protect each other. I thought. This is what a father's voice sounds like. Before they were led away, I raised my hand. Wait. Everyone froze. Linda looked at me with a flicker of hope, probably thinking I was losing my nerve. I walked toward my biological parents, stopping a breath away. Mom. Dad. The words still felt alien. I need you to understand something. What? My mother snapped. Asterisk, I don't hate you. Whatever she was expecting, it wasn't that. I don't hate you, I repeated. I just learned to accept who you are. You're not villains. You're just people who couldn't love me the way I needed to be loved. People who chose comfort over fairness. People who let one daughter become invisible so the other could shine. Robert was crying again. Linda's face remained a mask. But I've also learned to accept myself, I said, standing taller. And I am someone worth choosing. Not as a backup plan. Not as an afterthought. But as a first choice. You didn't choose me, they did. I pointed to the Millers. And I choose them. The room was pin-drop silent. 100 guests witnessed the moment. And no one moved. My mother started to speak. But I didn't give her the chance. I'm not erasing you from my history. I'm just not giving you a seat at my table anymore. This isn't revenge. It's just the natural consequence of your own choices. Goodbye, Mom. Goodbye, Dad. As they were escorted out, the guests began to applaud. Not for the drama, but for me. For a split second, a heavy silence returned. I saw a few older guests, friends of the Millers, exchange looks that weren't entirely approving. One elderly woman shook her head slightly, whispering to her neighbor, they're still her flesh and blood after all. In that moment, a question flashed through my mind. Am I becoming like them? Cold, calculating. Then I looked into Margaret's eyes. She gave a tiny, almost imperceptible nod as if to say, you did the right thing. The room erupted. The rest of the wedding was everything I had hoped for. We danced, we laughed. We cut the cake to cheers. Alex spun me around the dance floor until I was dizzy with happiness. The next morning, my phone exploded with messages from relatives I hadn't heard from in years, aunts and uncles I barely knew. How could you do that to your mother? Family is family, no matter what. You broke your father's heart. I deleted them all without responding. But then, a message came from someone unexpected. Aunt Patricia, my father's younger sister. Emily, I heard what happened. I want you to know. I am proud of you. I always knew Linda and Sophia were wrong for how they treated you. You finally claimed the respect you deserve. I tried to speak up. Once, Aunt Patricia wrote, and your mother didn't look at me for an entire year. But you deserved better. Emily, you always did. You aren't a risk to be managed anymore. You are a free woman. My eyes stung. I typed back, thank you, and Pat, this means more than you know. On Facebook, Linda posted a long, dramatic status about ungrateful children and how modern families don't understand the meaning of loyalty. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. That night, I blocked every number and social media account associated with the Hayes family. Not out of anger, but for peace. Alex found me on the balcony later. You okay? I looked out at the New York skyline, the lights shimmering like diamonds in the dark. Yeah, I said, leaning into him. I'm actually okay for the first time in my life. I wasn't carrying the weight of people who refused to protect me. I was finally free. 2 weeks after the wedding, a handwritten letter arrived at our new address. The sender, Sophia Hayes, her handwriting was flowery and perfect, just like the birthday cards she used to send, the ones that felt more like a chore than a gift. I almost threw it away, but something made me sit down and read it. Dear Emily, I don't know if you'll read this. I don't blame you if you toss it, but I had to try. Mom told me what happened at the wedding. She's completely devastated, and Dad has been a different person since they got home. I think seeing you happy without us broke him. I know we didn't always have the best relationship, but you have to understand. Mom and Dad were just trying to keep the peace. I never wanted you to feel left out. It's just that you always made things so complicated, always asking questions and bringing up old wounds. It was exhausting for the family's reputation. I hope one day you understand that family is complicated. I'm not asking for an apology. I just want you to know we still love you, even if you've decided we aren't good enough for you anymore. Your sister, Sophia. I read it twice, then I folded it neatly and put it in the deepest drawer of my desk. Sophia's letter. Alex asked when he got home. What did she say? Nothing new, I said, putting the phone away. She still doesn't get it. She never will. Does that bother you? I thought about it. No. I finally said, it's not my job to make her understand. It never was. A year after the wedding, life had settled into something beautiful. Alex and I bought a small house in the Brooklyn suburbs, close enough for Sunday dinners with John and Margaret, but far enough for our own space. We even started a small marketing firm together, focusing on authentic stories for local businesses. No more fake brands. And I'm pregnant. Margaret cried when we told her. John tried not to, but failed miserably. Ben's kids are already arguing over who will be the baby's favorite cousin. One Sunday afternoon, Margaret and I were painting the nursery a soft, calming blue. Have you thought of a name? She asked, holding up to different mobile toys. Grace, I said, if it's a girl, her name will be Grace Miller. A reminder that family is a gift, not a birthright. Margaret's eyes filled with tears. That's a beautiful name. The last name Miller is non-negotiable. I smiled. I want her to carry the name of the family that chose her mother. Margaret set the toy down and hugged me tight. You know, when I saw you sitting alone in that park, I never dreamed we'd come this far. You saved my life that night. Mom. No. Honey, she pulled back, holding my shoulders. You saved yourself. We just showed you that it was possible. Now, exactly 5 years since the night I sat alone in the cold, I'm sitting at the head of a very different table. The Miller house is loud in the best way. Baby Grace, now 6 months old, is being passed around like a little treasure. Ben's kids are playing cards. Ben's wife is debating the best way to roast a turkey with Alex. John is sneaking an extra slice of pie, thinking Margaret isn't looking. She is. All right, everyone. Margaret clapped her hands. Before we eat, we need a toast. She looked at me. Emily, would you do the honors? I stood up, holding Grace in my arms, looking around at the family that found me and the family I found in them 5 years ago. On this night, I said, I sat alone in a park, wondering if I'd ever belong anywhere. I thought I was unlovable. I thought I was a problem, too complicated, too sensitive, too much trouble. I felt Alex squeeze my knee under the table. Then a woman named Margaret Miller walked up to me and said, no one should be alone today. And everything changed. So, here's my toast. I raised my glass of warm tea to family. Not the one we were born into by chance, but the one we built by choice. The family that chose us back. Cheers to family. Everyone echoed. The sound of clinking glasses filled the room. John finally managed to snag his extra slice of pumpkin pie. I looked at these people, my people, and felt the one thing I had spent my entire childhood chasing. Absolute, unconditional belonging. For the first time in my life, I was actually home. After dinner, while everyone moved on to tea and small talk, I took baby Grace out to the back porch. I sat on the steps, listening to the muffled laughter of Alex and John drifting from inside. I took a deep breath, the smell of damp grass and pumpkin spice, out of an old, dying habit. My hand reached for my phone to check for messages. 2 See if anyone. My finger stopped midair. There was nothing to check. No one was waiting for my attention. There was only this moment, quiet, whole. The November air was crisp but comfortable. From where I sat, I could see a corner of the park. And in that moment, I spotted a young woman sitting alone on a distant bench, huddled against the cold exactly like I was 5 years ago. My heart tightened. Dog Grace. Now a feisty toddler, started squirming to get down. I set her on the grass, and on her sturdy little legs, she toddled straight toward the stranger. She stopped in front of the woman and, with the pure innocence of a child, held up a wildflower she'd just picked as if the instinct for kindness had been passed down through her blood. The woman startled, then looked at Grace, then at me standing in the distance. She smiled and took the flower. I whispered a silent prayer that she, too, would find her way. Alex stepped up behind me, wrapping his arms around my shoulders. A circle had closed for years ago. I was a lonely woman receiving kindness from strangers. Today, my daughter was paying it forward. This wasn't revenge or forgetting, this was a legacy of compassion. Do you ever think about them? Alex asked softly. Your biological parents? I weighed the question. Sometimes, I confessed. Usually in the middle of the night. I wonder how they're doing, if they've changed. If they finally understand what they lost. Do you think they have? I shook my head slowly. People rarely change in the ways that matter, especially when they're still busy protecting their perfect brand. Does that make you sad? I looked at Grace. Her tiny fist curled against her cheek, her chest rising and falling in peaceful rhythm. It used to, I said. But not anymore. I spent too many years being sad over a family that didn't want me. I don't have room for that sadness anymore. My life is too full. Alex squeezed me tighter. What changed? I did. I stopped waiting for them to love me the way I needed. I stopped shrinking myself to fit the version they wanted. And I started building something new. Through the window, I could see the Millers, my family, laughing, clearing plates, and packing leftovers. Setting boundaries isn't revenge, I said quietly. It's survival. It's choosing yourself when no one else will. Alex kissed my forehead. I'm glad you made it through. Me to. Grace stirred, making soft little noises. I picked her up and held her close. I will never make you work to earn my love, I whispered to her. I promise you will never have to wonder if you're wanted. You will always know. She let out a tiny yawn and drifted back to sleep. If you're watching this and you were ever the scapegoat in your family, if you were ever told you were too sensitive or causing trouble, just because you demanded fair treatment, I want you to know something. It wasn't your fault. It was never your fault. You deserve to be chosen, not as a backup plan, not as a sacrifice for someone else's comfort. You deserve to be the first choice, fully and without conditions. Family isn't just DNA. Family isn't an obligation. Family isn't people who share your blood, but treat you like a burden. Family is the people who show up. The people who see you crying alone and invite you to their table. The people who open their hearts and their legal documents to make you a permanent, official part of their lives. I spent 31 years trying to win love from people who never wanted to give it. And I spent 5 years learning what real love looks like, not from the family I was born into, but from the family that chose me. If the people who are supposed to love you keep putting you last, you have the right to build your own family. You have the right to walk away. You have the right to be happy. That's not revenge. That's not drama. That's simply living a life without people who don't deserve a seat at your table. I found my people, and I hope with all my heart that you find yours too. You deserve it. Now, my story belongs to you. If this touched you, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. It truly helps this message reach more people who might be sitting on that lonely park bench right now. I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to build a wall around your heart to protect it? Share your experience in the comments. I read every single one. And always remember, you deserve a seat at the table of your own life, and you have every right to decide exactly who gets to sit next to you.